Hey guys, Michael here. I'm going to bring up a point that I have talked about a little bit before, and I'm going to just continue to harp on this point in hopes that eventually it will filter over to the ears of somebody at CA. Now, I need to explain myself because there have been times based on the comments that I've gotten in the past where people somehow misconstrue what I'm saying. But what I have said before is I would be happy if CA never released another DLC, never added any more heroes or lords or factions or races or whatever, if instead of doing that, they fixed some of the fundamental problems in the game. In other words, what I'm saying is if it were an either or situation, I would rather see a fix the most glaring problems in the game as opposed to continuing to release new content. Now, that has been misconstrued by some people into me saying, I hope they don't release any new content. That's not what I'm saying. I know that they're going to continue to release more content as long as they think it's profitable, and I understand why they continue to do that and put their resources into releasing new content as opposed to fixing existing problems in the game. I will give them credit for trying to fix some of the problems in the game because they are still doing that with patches at the same time that they're releasing new content. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us would probably agree it's too slow. It's a trickle instead of doing a full sweep and fixing many of the glaring issues in the game. So that's just my preface here. This is one particular gamer. My perspective is that there are some glaring issues in the game. The game would be in a better state if they focused on fixing those issues rather than focusing on adding new content or doing reworks or anything else. I am not saying I hope they don't do reworks or add new content. I'm just saying if it were an either or situation. Anyway, hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, so what is it that I'm harping on that I have talked about before? There's really, I think, there are two problems in the game that are what I would consider to be intolerable. Like if I wasn't already addicted to the game, they would probably prevent me from playing the game. However, I am addicted to the game, and I do want to make it clear, I love so many aspects of this game. I do believe it is a flawed masterpiece. I think we sometimes lose the forest for the trees and we harp on these little issues and we don't allow ourselves to enjoy or appreciate all the things that the game gets right. So I just want to preface with all that to make it very clear where I'm coming from. I am an appreciator of this game. There are just two problems that in a game that has been around for this long, that is this mature, it is intolerable that these problems still exist. One of them is the gate bug in walled city battles, and you can live with, you can kind of work around it. You can auto-resolve city battles. At least most of the battles aren't walled city battles to begin with, so it only pops up in those particular circumstances, which are just a fraction of the battles that we have to fight. However, having said that, it does go a long ways towards actually ruining the experience of walled city battles. They've got to fix the gates. I've given a suggestion before, just have it so that once you close the gate, once you open the gates a single time, the gates stay open, or once they're closed a single time, they stay closed, or whatever. You just can't have this opening and closing and making it the gates unattackable, making them undestroyable, and also trapping units in limbo where they can't go in, they can't back up, they can't attack the gates or anything. It's just an absolute disaster. And I just, if you need to slap a bandage on it and just do something like what I just suggested, that would be better than the existing problem. However, like I said, the gate bug, at least that only happens in walled city battles. The number one problem in the game that I keep coming back to is chasing down fleeing units. You can see in the background here, I'm now focusing obviously on something that just happened, but I've mentioned it before. I got plenty of footage of times where this just fundamentally breaks down. Total War, the Total War series, is the best franchise out there for combining strategy with battles. If you don't have the battles, there are better strategy games out there. But the thing that makes Total War unique is the fact that it combines the strategy with the tactical. And so the battles are super important. You have to get the battles right. And there are plenty of aspects of the battles that CA gets right. But there's something that happens in almost every single battle that they get wrong, and it is intolerable that it's not fixed yet. And that is chasing down fleeing units, in particular, fleeing lords. Now, this has been a recurring problem in the Total War series as far back as I've played. The very first Total War game I ever played was Medieval 1, so I'm dating myself. I go back a really long way, and we had generals back in that game that we called Jedi, because you would wipe out the entire enemy army except for the one general, and that one general would keep fighting for another half an hour and kill 1,000 of your soldiers, and then he would finally break and flee and run away, and you try to run him down and he'd get away because they were just unkillable. They were Jedi Knights. Anyway, at least that problem doesn't still exist, although it kind of sort of does, because there's an awful lot of enemy lords that you're trying to trace down that you just cannot do any damage to them. And I get it, there's a mod, the Run Them Down mod is a good mod. It very slowly trickles down their health just by proximity of your own units being close to it. It's better than nothing, but it's not a solution. But the real problem that I want to talk about here is what we're seeing in this particular battle, which is the pathfinding on charging units against fleeing enemies is so ridiculously bad, and it's even worse for flying units. So as you can see, I'm trying to stop the enemy lord from running away by swerving around behind him, getting in between him and the edge of the map, and then charging him to knock him backwards to within range of my handgunner units that are trying to get close enough to shoot him. And he's not fast, and I'm on a flying mount here, so I'm obviously a lot faster than he is, but it looks to me like what happens is, from a pathfinding standpoint, it doesn't know how to path to an enemy unit. Charges in general are terrible for flying units, but particularly against a fleeing unit, it looks like it's trying to target behind the unit, or it's like taking a snapshot of where that unit is right now and starting the charge, but by the time he gets there, the unit has obviously moved on. And so consistently, no matter how many times I try this, and I try it attacking from the air, and I try it landing first and attacking from the ground, consistently, when you try to charge from the front in order to stop that unit from being able to run away, all you end up doing is circling around behind it and attacking it from behind. And more often than not, all you're actually doing is making the problem worse by pushing that unit forward. Sometimes you do some damage to it, and I do ultimately run him down in this battle, but you're just so often, you're just pushing the unit even further to the edge of the map, making it even harder for your units to run him down. So as you can see, I tried this over and over and over again in different ways, both on ground and from the air. It's just fundamentally broken. I don't know what the solution is. Well, I do know what a solution is, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I mean, this is where battles break down, and you can have so much fun fighting the battles, and then your lingering memory of the experience, instead of being able to focus on the fun aspects of the battle, instead your lingering memory is, well, it was great, I won the battle, and then I spent just as much time trying to run down the enemy lord as I spent winning the battle. And success or failure, it almost doesn't matter. It just leaves this bad taste in your mouth from having wasted all this time trying to run down the enemy lord. Why do we do it? Well, this leads me to my my suggestion as to a fix, it's not a good fix, but it's an easy fix. We do it because you are rewarded for killing the enemy lord. You are substantially less rewarded if the enemy lord gets away. My suggestion, and I've said this before, just change it so that you're not incentivized to have to kill the enemy lord. Just change it so that you get rewards based on the total ratio of enemy troops that are wounded or captured or killed or whatever, or just the total size of the army that you defeated, or use whatever calculation you want to use. Just do not make it so heavily weighted towards having to take out the enemy lord if it's going to continue to be this hard to take out the enemy lord. It's just broken the way it is. And like I said, it leads you to this experience where you can have fun fighting a battle and then promptly forget about it because your fun is replaced by irritation at the failure of your units to properly run down or do damage to the fleeing enemy lord. All right, anyway, rant over. Some of you have heard this before. Some of you may disagree. Feel free to disagree with me. Talk me down from the ledge here. But this is how I feel very strongly, is that this is such a magnificent game that they are ruining by this inattention to some of the fundamental issues in the game like this one that just desperately require being fixed. All right. Anyway, thanks everybody so much for watching and listening. Looking forward to seeing what your feedback is, seeing what, I know some of you agree with me, and like I said, I'm sure some of you don't disagree or don't agree with me. So anyway, kind of looking forward to any other suggestions that some of you might come up with as well. But all right, anyway, that's all I had. Thanks so much. By the way, this episode will be uploaded very shortly. So for those of you who are following the Emperor Karl Franz campaign, we are back in business after the patch dropped. I wasn't able to get it working at first, but it does appear to be working now, so that's good. All right, anyway, thanks everybody. I will see you all in the next video.